As you know, this 2024 edition of the forum is dedicated or entitled Cultural Mobility Beyond Internationalization. And our purpose for these 2 days are to discuss how and why we internationalize our practices. And we will be talking a lot about professional development. And by the word professional development, we talk about training, coaching, mentoring, mobility as a tool to grow. So during these 2 days and these 4 panels, we will have moderators and speakers coming from very different contexts, sharing what is the core or the ambition they have in terms of internationalizing practices. You are laughing at me because of my English, and this is the next point I want to make. I guess I'm following up on the wonderful Welsh language that we heard. Many of us in this room are not native English speakers. Many people following this conversation online are also not native English speakers. We are sharing a language that is not ours, and we will be exchanging ideas, concepts, and probably arguing sometimes on particular ways to word or describe our practices in a language that it is not ours. I just want to say it out loud. We are in a lovely and safe space where we use, for many of us, a foreign language. And I count on our, kindness to make sure we are understood, that we help one another in sharing ideas and not be judgmental or, whatever attitude. In this forum, we really wanted to invite contributors that could bring a very particular and unique input in conversations. And we decided to talk about international professional development program through different angles. And hopefully, through this forum, we will build, knowledge together. And each panel will build upon the previous one. So we acknowledge also that many of the questions that we will talk about will be addressed through different ways. So for the first panel, I am very happy to introduce Milica Ilić. Milica is a long-standing collaborator of On the Move. As a freelancer, she's contributing to an enormous amount of successful international collaborations and has been contributing to many key organizations in the arts and culture field, from Balkan Express, ITM, Onda, and many others. Milica will be facilitating a conversation around international professional development programs, points of departure, and points of arrival. Milica, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you also for this introduction. You're being too kind on me, but I do appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So my name is Milica Ilić. I will be your guide in this session this afternoon. I'm an independent cultural worker. I am based in Brussels, although I work transnationally, and I work on the strategic development of transnational projects, most of the time in contemporary performing arts. And I'll take a few minutes to describe myself, if I may. I'm a woman, my hair is short and a bit graying. I kind of joined Bojana in her identification with a group of middle-aged women. I've been told that my cheekbones sort of show that I am of Slavic origin. And so if you didn't guess that through my name, then I can definitely confirm I'm an Eastern European. And I have a sort of a Bordeaux sweater and a scarf. And yeah, that's about it. I will introduce our speakers today in a minute. I will maybe just give you a few kind of general ideas to set the stage on the conversation that we'll be having. So the topic, as Johan said, is international professional development, points of departure, points of arrival. And again, as Johan said, we are here in a space where we can maybe safely say that we are all convinced of the importance of working transnationally. And we are perhaps all driven by this conviction that international work opens perspectives, lets us see our work from different perspectives, gives different kinds of input to our work, works our empathy, enables us to find support, to find solidarity, and so on. Of course, in a sort of a larger context, we see that the rise of populism and the right-wing extremism and different kinds of nationalisms is threatening those processes, but at least here in this safe space of ours, of those of us that love and appreciate and support On the Move and cultural mobility in general, we can say that to develop an international practice is to step into a world of vast opportunities. However, this is also a world that is heavily influenced by political agendas. This is also a world that is marked by unequal power relations and by practices and organizational models that are set and that are established and that are hard to question. So our question here today will be how to make sure we create positive conditions for professional development while navigating these complex systems. How can we claim more freedom to explore? How can we keep our agency and our integrity as cultural workers while we are confronted with all these different agendas? And I would like, for once, I would like to ask ourselves to think maybe practically and positively, and I'm not the best person to think either practically or positively, as those of you that know me know. But let's try to be practical and positive. What are the support systems that we may know internationally or very locally that support professional development and that we can learn from, that perhaps navigate these complex systems or circumvent them or maybe hack them in a way that we can learn from? And let's also give ourselves space to maybe think speculatively or maybe to be imaginative. So let's try to imagine processes or systems or practices that would be more adapted to the way that the society is evolving or to the way that the art sector is evolving. So for this conversation, it will be the three of us, but it will also and certainly be you, and this will not be a one-way or a three-way conversation, but we really want to have an open conversation with you. I will give the floor first to the speakers, but then I'll very quickly open to the floor, and I hope that you'll take the chance to talk to this amazing woman that we have here with us. To introduce the speakers, and then I will ask you each, if you can, to just briefly describe yourselves as well. Ouafa Belgacem, who is expert in resource mobilization and management, and civil society department manager at the Anna Lindh Foundation. Ouafa is also founder and CEO of Culture Funding Watch, a social enterprise dedicated to sharing information on funding opportunities for art and cultural professionals in the MENA region. And I have to say also, Ouafa is a board member of On the Move. Then we also have Tamar Janashia, who is founder and director of the Culture and Management Lab in Tbilisi, Georgia, an organization that is active in the field of arts, cultural exchange, cultural policy, and strategic development of creative industries in Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And also, Tamara is currently working a lot in Central Asia. And we'll hear a bit more about it, I hope, later on. Tamara also currently serves as coordinator of the Tbilisi Architecture Biennial. Would you like to just take a few minutes to tell us, how you want to present yourself to those that cannot see us?
Okay, thank you. Just also to mention here, I'm really with my hat as CFW. So I am middle-aged woman, long dark hair, and I'm wearing blue clothes. I'm not white, I'm not black, I'm in between, so brown. And I'm wearing a kufiya in solidarity with the genocide going right now in Palestine. Yeah.
Tamara, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'm a white female from Georgia with short, not very short, but also not long hair until, which is kind of asymmetric. I'm wearing the glasses and wearing a dark blue dress, long dress with little white details on it. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's it.
So just to start off the conversation, maybe to throw the first very general question to you, what is the place of international professional development for you in your context, in your professional lives? And I'll start with you, Ouafa, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of my region, at least that I know for, it's the main, if I say the main characteristic of a professional development, opportunities of how the things are going on, it's not structured. It's based on the opportunity that comes, and most of them, they're not coming from a thought or a well-developed local or driven by whether player in our different ecosystem or our government. There are basically none, if we can say, like the really professional mobility or development programs, at least transnational. At the local level, there are some and it start coming. But international, it's yet based on the opportunity that comes from sometimes cooperation project or international organisms that are supporting this. However, if you look, the festivals plays a very big role in this professional mobility in at least the MENA and African continent. And I think it definitely has its impact. It's definitely better than nothing. But I think for my region, it's really time now to start really pushing, and then we are doing it. It starts coming in the conversation that it has to be part of a strategy, whatever we have at local level, whether it's cultural policies or small regional or local government strategies. So there is this consciousness coming now that we need a little bit more what we call it the professionalization of the sector as general. So it's coming, it's taking shape. We are organizing now. There is like how to say, conscious that there is some energy has to be put there and come up with like real proposals, a real vision for it. For example, if I can cite the quote, what's now you can, you know, about the intra-African trade agreement. So this is brought into conversation also the intra-African mobility, including the cultural creative sector mobility. I just concluded a study for the COMESA region about that, and one of the conclusion on the cultural creative economy in the COMESA region is the really strong need for like very well thought at part of this intra-trade agreement and implementation mechanisms that this mobility of artists, including professional objective mobility, is to be like thought and developed properly. Yeah.
And I'll just add, before I give the word to Tamara, I'll just add a small question that is kind of personal, but it's also about, I mean, I know, you know, what your professional parcours trajectory was. But can you tell us also what kind of role it played for you, the professional development, the transnational professional development, transnational collaboration in your own professional evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fundamental. I mean, it's not being connected, not knowing who is doing what, not learning from others, not. It's very, very, how to say, ça te retient, it drags you back. So for me, I have this chance and privilege to very quickly being exposed to this international community, to seeing you, being on the MOVE board member. It's something that a game changer in one's career. Whether you are from the north and from the south, it goes both ways, because we work in between bracket globalized world, and this need of working together, this need of putting energy together, this need of understanding how the others work and what's the constraint of the other, so you could understand how to better work with that person. And I think it's fundamental to understand and know what's going on around you and the dynamics. It's important to know where you position yourself. What's the role you can play, what's your added value, and what's also the limit, the interest, whatever, let's say it, even the agenda of the others. It's very important. So you start to have this healthy relationship, what you know, what your objectives and what your constraints compared to what are mine. So definitely in my career, it has been fundamental, being able to navigate different encounters, being able to, and the prestige that goes of it. Let's say it openly. It's very important. Like, you are a known person, you go around. So, but I think the good thing, not for me personally, but the good thing, many of us has balanced this part of being just famous and walking around and have a meaningful connection to the others. Because let's say it, we know there is a name for that. You know that we call that the cultural manager tourist. Yes. So, and of course, things are evolving. In the past, very few of us had this chance. Today, more the things had opened a little bit more, actually much more, and we see new faces, and we are a little more equal. You're good. You could connect, and you can be mobile. But I think, again, from the global South perspective, at least to be honest, from my region perspective, there is really a need for more structured, like, if we want to be effective beyond having connection, the importance of networking is to have a clear path development, because I made it, but it was long, because I didn't know how to navigate. So wasted time, not wasted, it's not waste, but at the beginning it was just connect, like go everywhere and anywhere. And maybe that's why this impression of conference tourist is there, because people, either they have not enough visibility to see, okay, what are the options for me so I can choose what's relevant. And we did not know, and there is not the many of them, like 10, 15 years ago. So we just jump on whatever is available. And you may look like not consistent, and you also may look like you waste time, you go and encounter, but it's not really what you're looking for. So, but it's getting better now, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. There's a lot of things that we would like to unpack on that part later on. But I'll pass the word to Tamara. We're in a very different geography, very different context, very different also set of political agendas and political evolutions and contexts. Can you give us a little bit more about what it looks like from your side?
Currently, South Caucasus and also the Central Asian countries where I work are very much impacted by the political decisions, and it is really a political playground for different influences, which we want to get rid of as post-Soviet countries, but sometimes are in a very different position to do so. The needs in these regions are very, very different, though the past is somehow the common past. We all come from there, and we should more or less understand the context better than the people who come from the West or the other countries. One of the needs is to get out from this mode of being, of trying to self-exoticize ourselves, because sometimes people think that they don't have enough tools to talk to the Western countries in the same language and somehow to come across into their culture, and this is what they are trying to do. For example, this happens very, very often in the Central Asia, where together with my Ukrainian colleague, we are conducting the trainings of cultural managers, but first of all, trainings of the local trainers, because we think that it is very important that people don't come, and this mobility is of course very good, that you come there, learn about the culture, but we still understand much less about the culture and how to approach the people. And there is also a very big language barrier, where people in the regions, they don't speak the same language, so it's really difficult. And these countries still concentrate very much on the Russian-speaking area. So for them, like for contemporary arts, the Garage in Moscow, this is like the top institution that they want to resemble to, and this somehow also limits their scope a lot, because they have a lot to offer and somehow they don't know how to go beyond this, these frameworks. Also in Georgia, the context at the moment is very, very, I would say, not only complicated but also weird, where we ourselves cannot really figure out what is happening there, because after the start of the war in Ukraine, of course, Georgia became a place where a lot of people came and relocated. As one of my friends says, most of these people who call them relicants, they really see us as a location, not as a country. And this is the maximum they want to do, to be in another location, and they don't really care where they are, because at the moment the situation is the following, that there are many, many different worlds existing in parallel to each other, and this was a huge discovery to me, because 2 years ago I was hosting an artist from Belarus, and then I suddenly discovered there is a very big artistic community there that we don't really know about. We know a lot about the Ukrainians who relocated to Georgia, because the support from the general public and art scene is really huge, but all the others, somehow they fall beyond all this situation. And I would say that, is there mobility there? Definitely there is a huge mobility and huge influx of very creative people, but there is no internationalization at all, because we have no idea what is happening on the next street to us. And couple of weeks ago I was making a research for a project, because we decided to organize a residency for people who are based in Georgia at the moment, and somehow proceed with their creative work, though they don't really interact with each other. And it was a pure discovery for me to see that there are people organizing a lot of events, big events in the very central part of the city, but no one really knows about them except for their communities. And this is somehow the situation that makes us think, what is the benefit of mobility? Because if we don't really interact with each other, and if we don't really become inclusive, because these people, they are not the tourists, they are there for long, and they are also going to stay there for long. How are we as a country and the culture benefit, not in a bad sense, but benefit and culturally enrich our culture, because Georgia has been traditionally a melting point of different cultures, but this is really the first case to me when everyone does their own thing, doesn't really want to interact with each other, because this brings also another question, is the mobility somehow interesting to the people who cannot really accept it? Because if all these people come to our country and live there, and we don't really accept them as something really important or interesting, this is also another issue. What this is connected to, is this the fear, inability to accept the foreigners, inability to accept different newcomers, new cultures, or this is also very much related to the solidarity, for example, to the Ukrainians, and this is why we don't want to work with certain groups of people who maybe are in a very bad situation themselves, so you cannot really judge everything so black and white. And this also gives the raise to the question of neocolonialism, because very often people who come, they think that their culture is primary culture, so they don't really want to interact with these aborigines people who are not very interesting. I have only, oh, the Swiss want to make a project here, what is interesting, so that they could do something, and we are here since 3 years and we haven't found anything interesting, so do you go to the theaters and museums? And wow, this is really strange. So it is very often the situation that we end up with, and so the mobility also gives a very big, opens up a very big field of discussing where we stand at the moment and what could be the benefit of also professional development, because so many people together doing so many different things, it can be interesting not only from the personal but also professional point of view. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really makes me think of it, and I noted it down. I didn't know if I was going to use it, but it's a quote that I like very much by a Brussels-based artist called Sarah van E, who wrote an amazing text that I refer to a lot, but she's talking about what you mentioned also, how internationalization can also be not necessarily related to crossing borders, but also just looking at what is around you in your own environment. And I'll read how she formulated, because she does it far better than me. She's saying, for me, internationalization has nothing to do with expanding your action radius beyond the limits of the city or the country where you live, but with the recognition of what is plural and international within that city or country, in short, within your own environment. And I find it beautiful how you turned the question around, actually, by saying, well, let's see how we can be international without necessarily going somewhere else, but just by looking at what is around us. Ouafa, can you refer to this? Is this something that can resonate with you?
It resonates as a Tunisian. This is what we are. Like in my blood, you will find the Italian, the German, the Arab, the Yemeni, the French, the Italian, and that's, we live, I mean, in Tunis, we live in a really multicultural and international environment, that our language, it's, if in a Tunisian, one Tunisian sentence, you would have the French, the Italian, and the Arabic, and the 3-4 languages in one sentence. And even in our dialect, some words doesn't even have word in Arabic, but they have in French. So it's really resonates, and it's yeah, this is our daily life. And we, at least in Tunisia now, we, not now, forever, we have always been valorizing this pluralism, very proud. I mean, when we talk about Claudia Cardinali, she's a Tunisian, we're very proud of her. When we, so that's definitely something that we are very, at least in my country, we're very, very, how to say, conscious about it. And I think it's, and I see it also in the new generation. When I look at the next generation of art worker in Tunisia, the youngest now, and the artists and their work, it's really reflects. I mean, this is something that it's very deep-rooted, but it's transmitted from a generation to another in their artwork, and I think that's very good. That's a very good thing. Yeah.
I can confirm that, Ouafa, because Ouafa and I worked on a project together, and some of the text, it was really puzzling, like, wait, which language is this referring to again? Because so much of it is mixed. But I also want to, before I open to the floor, I also want to kind of draw the conversation towards something that we talked a lot about when we were preparing for this session. And it's, okay, there's your action, and there's the context that we can define, but there's also different agendas that intervene in that context. Different power structures that are stepping into this context and then trying to stir the conversation. And can you tell us a little bit about how you feel from your own perspective? What are these dynamics, and how can we navigate them? Ouafa, you want to start, or Tamara?
At the moment, the biggest agenda, I think, in our region is somehow to get away from the Russian influence, which is getting stronger and stronger, despite the fact that, for example, Georgia was on the 15th of December given the status of the candidacy for the European Union, but politically the situation is very, very different. So at the moment there are a lot of protests going on the streets because this Russian law about the foreign agents is still on the agenda of the parliament. They want to pass it, which doesn't really fit into all the situation and the aspirations of the Georgian population. So,
can you just clarify what the law is about?
It is about the foreign agents when the organizations, primarily these are the NGOs, who get most of their funding, about 80% of their funding from abroad. And there is a very big amount of these kind of people in Georgia who they need to register themselves as foreign agents, and then they can be controlled anytime, fined anytime, and most of them will get closed, of course, because, for example, the same thing happened in Kyrgyzstan. On the 13th of March, the law was passed. And like 5 days ago, the Soros Foundation, which was there since '93 and invested more than $150 million in all the projects, not only the cultural projects, but also the social, it has got closed down. And we, as one of the NGOs who are working there, we were told that The word social is now the same as the political, so there is a big chance that you will also be closed down, so you don't really mention certain things or do certain things, which means a very, very big curb in the freedom of speech and freedom of actions, because anything could be interpreted as a foreign influence, which is not welcome there. So, and this of course influences the whole situation a lot, because this will also mean much less mobility for the people, because we in Georgia, we are really privileged that a couple of years ago we have got the status, visa-free status, and I see it all the time, for example, with our partners from Armenia, Azerbaijan, and also Central Asia, how many challenges they have to go through to be mobile. And this is really very important, because we organized a cultural managers training in Uzbekistan in 2018 and 19, and the whole program was about giving them the professional development tools, but also take them to Germany for 10 days and really show how it works in reality. And if this doesn't happen in the future, this will be a very, very bad thing, because if people don't really see how things happen in reality and on a bigger scale, and they don't get inspired with these kind of projects, but also have a chance to forge new contacts, they will always remain under the influence of Russian-speaking area, which is like doesn't really give any chance to develop further. So this is really a very challenging situation at the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ouafa?
Yeah, I mean, what we talked about yesterday, as I mentioned it earlier, the fact that the resources are not, the support to this mobility doesn't come from our own resources, and most of the ecosystems in my continent are depending on international aid or international partners. So when it's not your money, you don't put your priority, you don't design what is the first interest of you. And this is why actually I founded CFW. I mean, CFW is not about writing grants for people. People are always surprised when they come to us and said, no, we don't write grants for people. Our work is to make sure that what I call it financial ecosystem for the cultural creative industries on my continent are friendly to the CCIs, meaning that my dream is that in the future, just like in your ecosystems, we are funded by our own resources, whether it's government or private sector or philanthropists. So what we do is we really look on our ecosystem, identify the potential individuals or institutions or foundation who just need a little bit of lobbying and influence to start doing in the art. And then we do a plan. It's like 1 or 2 years. That's like a kind of lobby agency, and then we work on them, educate. We do a lot of education. We call it investor education or donor education about it's worth it, it means this is how you do it. To create spaces for them to meet with the other who gives, so they can influence each other. And currently we're doing a study in Tunisia on, the hope is a pilot to put a methodology and then apply it to the larger continent, which is about individual given from private sector to the cultural creative art and sectors. And then we're teaming up with the Arab Foundations Forum, which is the foundations, the Association of Arab Foundation, the Arab world, to scale this up later in MENA, and of course we hope also to do it in Africa. So that money perspective, it's sad to say, but it really comes always back to the money, to the funding. If you're not financially independent, you cannot put the right strategies for yourself. So I mean, if I take another example, the fact that our financing is mostly coming, for example, at least from Maria, from Europe, there is basically none of opportunity for professional connection with any other region of the world, because we only work. And you know, in my region, we're allowed to have 4 husbands. I'm saying husbands, not wives. So if I love you, European, but I want to have a second husband, you know, it should change a little bit. But I could not afford it because there is no means for that. So if this comes, we have like our own, we work on our own resources. So we design what it's perfectly fit to us. And it's not a criticism because it makes sense. when a program that's supporting professional development coming from Croatia, coming from UK, coming from France, they are designed based on the needs of their ecosystem, and that's their mandate. That's totally fair. But what lacks from my side is that we don't have the same thing for us, and that's where is the problem, and that's what we try to change in where we operate as CFW.
Yeah. No, that I absolutely agree with you. Also, from my own experience, somehow the similarities between the issues, the challenges, the problems that you can identify in the Arabic-speaking world and those in certain other regions, like in Eastern Europe, like in Southeast Europe, are so much more similar than with Western Europe, and yet we tend to somehow all kind of direct ourselves towards the West, instead of having opportunities to exchange between us. Yeah. But now is the time for you to jump into this conversation. How does this resonate with you? Do you have questions or comments, things to add to this landscape that we're drawing here? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Yeah, go ahead. Eric. Yeah.
My name is Eric Ilić. There is a mic just behind you. Hello. My name is Eric Ilić. Tamara, this is a question for you, because we are talking about cultural mobility and arrivals and departure. And at the point of arrival, one of the things that people bring is the issue of language. And given the fact that you're talking about being from Eastern Europe, how do you navigate this linguistic tightrope when you meet Ukrainians who are cultural ambassadors and Belarusians who are cultural ambassadors in Tbilisi, given the fact that the Russian language in Ukraine is seen as a language of oppression? So how do you navigate this phase? Thank you.
This is actually a very good question, because most of the people try now to talk to each other in English in Georgia. And there are even people who speak very good Russian because of the whole situation. I have a lot of friends who just refuse to talk Russian, because despite the fact that they know it really well, so they would talk Russian, for example, to someone from Armenia or Azerbaijan if there is no other common language, but not to the Russians, because this is also one of the ways of neocolonialism, because usually you get approached on the street and you don't really get a question, do you speak Russian or do you speak English? They immediately start to talk to you in Russian. This is a very typical situation, and a lot of people, they don't answer in Russian anymore. So, for example, with Ukrainians, it is absolutely no problem. But, for example, in Central Asia, this is really a problem, because the common language there is Russian. There are not so many people talking in English. So, and this is what makes them more vulnerable to this whole political influences. So in Georgia, situation is a little bit different. Thank you.
We have several mics at different parts of the room. So if you want to take the floor, please use one of the mics next to you. And also we have maybe online questions that have been posted. And I know that Marie Le Sourd, the Secretary General of On the Move, and Katie James, working for the Mobility Info Points UK, have an eye on potential posts, comments and questions. So in case you have, please take the floor. Back to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Johan. Any other comments or questions to what has been said until now? We don't have a lot of time, so you better jump right in. Otherwise, it will be too late. And then checking also with Marie, if you want to. Okay. So then I'll kind of come back to my needs to. Oh, there is one. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Ruth Jacobi again from the European Music Council. I would like to come back to what you said about the funding, and that you are lacking your own funding to set your own agenda, and that it's nice to have European funding, but then if I get it well, it also creates some kind of a dependency. You're dependent from, and also from the European perspective, we find it very difficult to use the European money in a good way for international work, because I mean the EU funding saves space, right? is exporting European culture
Yeah,
to
fair enough.
internationally, but that's not what we European Music Council, and I imagine we all in this room, this is not how we want to use this money. So we try to address it. We try to do policy work to tell EU that international work is nice, but it has to be done the right way. So I don't know, maybe we can join forces to do this better or more intensively. But I wanted to say, don't you're not alone.
Thank you.
But it's difficult.
it's
We don't
good.
know how to address the issue
Absolutely.
actually.
Absolutely. And actually, I don't feel that the fact that it's triggered, this money with a European agenda, because that makes sense. That's their mandate. I'm not questioning that. My problem is not that, I'm saying, but for me, it's fundamental. It's a matter of principle. I appreciate what you're thinking, but for me, that's not the solution. My horizon, it's not the best what I think of is more help or better help from the EU. No. My right to dream is I don't need the EU. And that should be my agenda. And that's my agenda personally. And that's how we're gonna put equal relationship. That will question the power balance, because let's put it, it's all about money. So when we are at least equal in money, then we can have a real partnership. Partnership when we are not equal, it's not a real partnership, it's fake. And the moment that anything shakes it, it's fall down. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's not an issue that an EU has an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. And I am fighting the same way. I said, I want my Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tunisia to have an agenda, and that's legitimate. Why would I accept it for myself and deny it for European? That's fair. That's the mandate of the EU, and they are doing their job. In terms of pushing for that. But what I want is the similar thing, the similar powerful policy and agendas coming from, and then as a civilized words and regions, we sit together and see where our interests intersect in equal discussion. That's it.
That reminds me of something. Once I had a meeting at the municipality in Tbilisi, and the guy who was in a very high position, he was super proud to tell us that actually we don't have any agenda, and this is a super good thing, because we are absolutely flexible to do whatever we want. And it was like a shocking thing to discover, to be told us so openly that they don't even know what they want to do, and it was very interesting.
I fully agree with you, Ouafa, and I would also like to sort of add another layer, because there are these agendas, but there are those of us, if I allow myself to kind of put myself in that category, there are those of us that sort of feel that we are kind of working in the same direction, and that the national and the regional level is not the only level that we can work on. And it seems to me that there is a certain level in at least in a setting like this, of shared responsibility. If Tunisian artists or artists or art workers from the Arabic-speaking world cannot access professional development opportunities, then that's a problem as much for you, not you personally, but you as a sector, as a Tunisian art sector or Arabic-speaking art sector. But it's also a problem for those of us that sit in Western Europe or those of us that sit in Eastern Europe. And it's because then that means also that our audiences are suffering because they are not confronted with a variety of artistic visions and so on. So there is some kind of common ground, it seems to me, that we need to find a way through. And so connected to that, I wonder if you have examples. You mentioned Culture Funding Watch, but if there are initiative examples that you know of that maybe are not connected to political agendas or are, but kind of successfully, hack them and turn them around for the sake of this joint responsibility that we share for the arts, not the arts in one country, but the arts.
Something I knew, it's in DRC, I don't remember the name because I'm very bad with names, but in the scope of this study on mobility in Africa we're doing right now, I really loved it because even there is no means, what they realize it as a barrier for professional development between limitrof countries, it's that the lack of, sometimes it's as simple as not knowing where to go, where are the spaces. And they simply created this information about the different spaces on a route. So how you go from DRC to the neighbor country, and it's working. I mean, it's sometimes as simple as that. People do not move because they don't know where to land or where to go. And I find it brilliant. I will find the name of the collective who did this for you. I think they were in the MOCA. They presented that in the MOCA, Marwan, if you remember. So yes, I think this is a very good best practice. I saw other best practice in terms of in South Africa. It's the agency of royalty collection for artists in there, and what they did, it's very brilliant. It's they have to face the shortage of resources. Actually, they advance money to the artists based on the calculation of their royalties. It's a really interesting model. It's self-sufficient, and it's based on the history, so people do not miss opportunity or need that investment to attend a festival or an event. So they go, they apply, and if they royalty, and they have some calculation based on that, and they could go. Another example comes from Niger, from Ministry of Culture, and it's really interesting. Niger, it's one of the countries that very little means for it. And they had this small budget for mobility, and then the responsible for this said, okay, what are my choices? I use this budget to fund maybe 2 or 3 mobility grants, or I invested in something that could help more, so they bought a bus. And the bus is, you apply to get the bus to go from Niger to Mali for a festival, and then it's back, so you can take the whole band. And it's a very smart way and a very sustainable way to go around our limitation on our continent. And I think this kind of practice are really worth, and this is what we are documenting in this study, and really worth praising. And I was really surprised when doing this study, because we have this perception and narrative that our government are doing nothing. That's not true. There is no effective study that has been done. The problem is when we deal with this, we don't include the proportionality. If you realize how much is that from that government budget, it's something. It's not true to say there is nothing. It's never enough, but there are people who are trying to do things. With the little we have in the continent, we are smartly dealing with our limitation. And I think there is lots of smartness and intelligence to be learned and taught from in our continent to other regions of the world who are facing the same limitation. I think this study, if there is something for me, is not hope, better than hope, pride. I'm very proud of what I have discovered. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Maybe it is important to mention that there are some parallel initiatives popping up in Georgia at the moment. And I think it is really important that people don't really wait for the government to do something, because it is really, first of all, useless. Another thing is that it's like you struggle for it like 20 years and nothing really comes. So people really started to self-organize and also invent or introduce some mobility schemes that they are managing on their own. For example, the very recent case was the case with the Film Center, which was like the people who were in the administration, they are very pro-governmental, and all the others were kicked out, and they were about 450 persons from the film industry, and they established a new organization which operates independently on self-support systems, and they generate the money themselves, also supplementing with the grants, so that they were able to go to Berlinale. And it was like an absurd situation when the Film Center was presenting their films there, because there is nothing else to present, and this group was doing their own booth in parallel to them. But I think more these kind of initiatives we have, stronger we will get, because the government will also see that if people don't want to cooperate with them, there is something really wrong with it. Because like in 2015, there was a very big breakthrough when the Ministry of Culture, they elaborated a strategic action plan, where also the British experts were involved, and the two main recommendations were that, first of all, there had to be a fund created on the arm's length of the ministry, and another one was to create the professional unions. And so in 2015, this was a very big declaration that we will hand this fund, because at the moment the ministry is the biggest donor in the country, and they also had the mobility funds and mobility schemes, which they just stopped. So it is a very difficult situation when the Georgian artists, if they want to go somewhere to attend some international, not only international events, they have to invest their own money, or seek the money from the foreign funds, which we really get pushed to do, because there is no other choice. And in 2022, the ministry said that this fund will never be created in a form that it was conceived, so which is a very, very big drawback, actually, and a very big blow to the independent development of this sector. So I think it is really important not to look at the others all the time, and somehow to find the ways also for mobility. For example, my organization, we started last year the mobility scheme, which gives the Georgian artists the opportunity to go to Georgian locations, because there is absolutely no other funding where you would not invest your own money to go to another location and do something in your own country, which is like, it is much easier to get funding to go to Australia than to go from one city of Georgia to another. So last year we had a very good example of that 3 people have got it. Now we have another round for it, and yeah, the number of application also shows that the need and the interest is really huge for that.
Another round of questions, if anybody feels like it. And also throwing the question at you, do you have examples that you might want to put on the table of support structures or initiatives that are supporting professional development of artists and art workers, and that sort of take into account these complexities, but are maybe somehow successful in navigating them? Or we don't have these ideas in our sector.
Or people are shy. Don't be shy.
There is Nika.
Yeah, Nika.
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
If I dare to say, a platform that I've been leading on in South Africa, the Pan-African Creative Exchange, and it was really in response to that figure. It was one of the reasons, I mean, depending on who you ask, of that figure that says less than, of all the touring product that we see around the world, opportunities, residencies, etc., less than 1% come from the continent of Africa. And that's not to say that cultural product's not being made, it's just it's not getting out, and it's all these issues that have been outlined today. Mobility is huge, and it's extremely problematic, and they don't have access. Like I would go around, I'd go around the world, and often I'd be the only person of colour there. If I'm not the only person of colour, there's other Africans. There's never any Caribbeans. I mean, kudos to getting Kim Marie here, because there's hardly ever any Caribbeans in this space. And what does that do to a community of people and the diaspora that already feel like they're heavily marginalized? They don't feel like their voices in the room, or the voices are coming from the perspective of someone like me who lives abroad. So our showcase platform was simply set up to support artists on the continent to be able to have access to people who we would describe as willing and who want to connect. So a lot of people from across Africa, but majority from the global north, Australia, the US, and across Europe, coming to see work with a view of finding ways to partner, to collaborate, to also appreciate from their perspective. There's something nice about somebody coming into your home and you welcome them and you give them food and you explain a little bit about who you are, rather than always coming out and feeling like a lot of Africans say we're made to feel like we're beggars if we ask for our funding and our per diems. I said per diems are supposed to be coming in advance, not after. So I would like to say that what we're doing with the Pan-African Creative Exchange is a combination of people from around communities around the world, Ouafa, there's a number of people in this room that have been our support and advocates to support this platform with very, very little funding, just grow and advance opportunities for people on the continent, people in the diaspora, and people whose work is responding to contemporary Africa. And listening to Tamar, I realized how much of our work resonates with the work that you're doing and some of the challenges. I mean, we hear in South Africa in particular, a lot of people having that same kind of like aversion to speaking Afrikaans because it was forced upon them, especially the older generation. And I think there's something about finding ways to collaborate beyond the funder. I made a decision very early on that I wasn't going to go for any funding until I could, first of all, ensure that I wasn't replicating structures that I felt were quite oppressive. And that's quite hard to do because it means that you're giving a lot of your time. And I think lots of people in this room, as I've been speaking to people today, and some of them I know, have done that. And actually, how do we recognize that and encourage that? Because it's quite a difficult space because you think, well, if it doesn't work, it's beginning to work. It's beginning to get busy, but of course it sometimes gets busy all at once. And that goes back to what this lady said about well-being and not being burnt out. Mm. So I throw that out. I throw out the Pan-African Creative Exchange because I'm quite proud. We get opportunities. If we can't use them, we pass them on. We always say, can we share this with somebody in our community, within our family that have maybe supported us? So we don't just get the opportunity and say, no, I can't make it, and not think about other people that could benefit. So I won't say too much more, but I just wanted to say something.
Thanks,
okay,
Nikki.
Thank you both. It was really provocative points.
No, thank you, and it's also, and you didn't mention it, but it's there as well, the fact that professionals from the global north would come and be welcomed. That's also professional development for them because it's also understanding the context and understanding a piece of a work of art that they see within the context where it's being created.
That's a very good point. But also, for the diaspora that sometimes feel marginalized in the global north, so people living in Europe or living in the Americas or wherever, to hear feedback from artists from Senegal or somebody who's Sutu speaking in South Africa or someone from Kenya to articulate their practice back to them, often you hear them say, I didn't even know that's what I was trying to say, but that's been the mush in my head that I've not been able to articulate. It's incredibly restorative at a time when everybody needs to feel like they're valued. And you're right, lots of people say to us, we had a lady from the Lincoln Center who said, I kept going everywhere to find a different way of working. It didn't occur to me to go beyond Europe and those usual spaces. So you're right, I think there's something about coming onto the continent where you're always in this. I always say I have to park all my ways of thinking and doing at Heathrow and come with a new headspace and be prepared to be challenged and to change my mind and not be so English, because sometimes I have my Englishisms as well. So yeah, you're right.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
I was hesitating to ask a question because I'm speaking next and I'm afraid to say everything smart that I have right now. But when you were talking about the diaspora and also its role, and I wanted to ask this question to both of you, how can we, I'm Laura Genza from Africalia, and I wanted to ask how can we use maybe the diaspora in the global north, who I think has this view towards their home countries. How can we, I don't know, how can we make it so that they can connect as well and they can be useful in this lobbying that you were talking about? I do understand that it's not the EU who has to solve those problems on the continent, but I do think there is a shared responsibility and a duty from our ex-colonizers to do something about the problems they created. And I think this is something that's very present in the diasporas. As part of the program in Africalia, I do work mainly with the diasporic communities in Belgium. And I think there is something there, a way to connect that we haven't been able to properly do now. But how do you see it? I would like to a bit get your ideas on that.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, the involvement of the diaspora, let's stay in the art and cultural sector, right? And the continent, it's not equal. There is a level of awareness that is different from, I hate this word, the sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa. So in the sub-Saharan Africa, there is a very engaged, motivated and aware diaspora of their role and their weight, and it's really getting very well organized. And it depends, but at least in the Anglophone, between bracket Africa, that in Northern Africa, we are still far from it. Morocco are doing much better than Tunisia, for example. Tunisia are, at least for the art sector, we're not tapping into that capacity, and the efforts are not organized, but it's coming. For example, lately, I was surprisingly invited by an ambassador and saying we want to reorganize the Tunisian diaspora. We want to, they said, oh, yes, let's work on the CCIs. Okay, so I don't know what will come out of it, but there is an interest now to organize the diaspora, at least in my country. So I think it's a matter of, as you mentioned, it's a matter of, I think there are two streams for it. There is the institutional part, like there is taking care of the diaspora, keeping it engaged, etc. And there is the independent. And I think in our countries, it's again a matter of means. If you struggle to survive yourself and do the basic work you need to do first, it's really hard to find time, means, and energy because it's advocacy, and advocacy takes time, energy, and means. So I think it's also, unfortunately, I bring everything to funding because that's my thing, but it plays a huge role in it, having the means and the time and the resources to organize and to connect with the diaspora, definitely, yes.
So I would say that in Georgia, the artistic diaspora is very much linked to their home country still. So I wouldn't really differentiate. There are a lot of people who are abroad and are very successful and doing whatever they can, but they are also helping the young people a lot. We even had with the Goethe Institute a couple of years ago a very interesting project which was about the reverse brain drain. And we brought quite successful artists who operated in Germany or Austria or some other countries back, and some of them they haven't been there for years, but then they relocated. They came back. So it was really a very good project because I think out of 12 participants, 3 or 4 are now permanently based in Georgia. So this link is still existing, so I wouldn't really say that it needs any extra effort or anything. Yeah.
Other questions? Comments, contributions?
But what I would maybe mention, the thing is that still all these mobility grants and also the professional development schemes, they are very much compartmentalized because they are grouped based on the geography, and we somehow never interact with the people outside the region because there are a lot of programs designed for the Eastern Partnership countries, then there are the other ones, some other type of countries, and it doesn't really, or even if this kind of schemes exist, we don't really know about them and don't use these opportunities.
So, but what would it, if we were to draw a map of what is possible, like what exists in terms of support structures, what would you say is missing? You say there
it's missing a broader approach, I would say, because all these big institutions that work on the cultural projects and somehow bring these peoples together. So, for example, also Goethe Institute, it constructs a lot of projects which are region, and the whole region is the post-Soviet countries, and the needs in these countries are absolutely different. But sometimes these people are artificially brought together, and I think that at some extent some of the projects are not very successful because everyone does what they can and what they want, but it somehow doesn't really overlap with each other very often. But for example, Danish Cultural Institute has a very good scheme now. They started to work in our region since 2 years, and their approach is, I think, also very unique because they have these partners from the Eastern Partnership countries, but you are also given the freedom to decide with which partner you want to do with project. And this way you have overlaps and you have also independent work and all kind of schemes. And this is really good because we are not forced to be friends, like, you know, and we know all from the Soviet Union how this ends at the very, you know, but yeah, so but I think this forceful putting people together in the different groups is really very outdated somehow.
Yeah, and if
Yeah, just a second, I'll
Yeah,
let
yeah.
Ouafa say, and then, yeah. Ouafa.
And I'd like to mention the SDP project that we developed. I mean, the digital and the new technology brought a lots of opportunity and professional development that could be not. Of course, it doesn't substitute to physical meetings, but at least it offers something until these things. So, and I'm like you. I don't like waiting for people to understand where. So I'm very impatient. So with these online platforms, we have developed a program. It's called a Skills Development Program, which is now gives me the opportunity and the freedom to connect without needing any fund. It came actually from the perspective of how can I do things without getting stuck and needing money. So the SDP is based on win-win. So it wasn't a certain time where as CFW we wanted to be visible, people know about the platform more. The usual way to do it is to apply for a grant, to have someone given money, hire a communication person, a company, and then do the campaign. I said, okay, what can I do without having to have the money? I don't have it. What do I have I can offer to a partner in exchange? So the SDP comes in a very simple model. You are a very visible cultural actor in a space that I am interested in. You have programs that require capacity building and training for anything related to fundraising, access to resources, business model, which is my expertise. So the SDP is 2 months program. It includes 4 master classes. You choose, I have a catalog of trainings, and you choose what's relevant to your community. What I ask from you is, we open a call for applications, so we publicize, there is visibility. You select your community, we don't get into your things. I deliver 4 master classes for the selected community. What I ask is you share the posts about the event, what's happening. I become, as CFW, very visible to that ecosystem. There is a win-win, no grant, no report, no invoice, nothing of those things. And I can do it wherever I want, with whatever ecosystem I want, and anywhere in the world. And just this morning we were talking about the Mekong hub. I said, oh yeah, we did it in Anglophone Africa. We're doing it, the French, we're doing it with Africalia right now, and the French-speaking Africa. And soon we're launching the Arabic-speaking Africa cohort, the SDP Arab-speaking cohort. And then with this morning we're talking about Mekong. I said, yeah, let's do it. Because the model is built, it doesn't take any effort now. To put in place this 2 months program, it takes 1 week that's it. The model is there, the posts are there, the communication is there. We just change the logos, the name, and it's done. So technology sometimes it's not the best solution, but given that I don't have those resources, so at least I can connect people online and know some people, and the platform is amazing. We used in spaces. I'm not making publicity for them, but there are really nice platforms that really help connect. Yeah.
Thanks, Ouafa. We have a question or a comment here.
Yeah, initially I had the comment, but I feel like maybe it's come through. So, but maybe I'll speak a bit from my other hat. I'm here today. My name's Oyinda. I am the president of Res Artistes, but I also am the director of the Center for Contemporary Arts in Lagos. And most of my arts administrative experience has happened on the continent or through this, on the continent of Africa, or through my relationship with this organization. And actually, when I moved to Nigeria maybe 16 years ago was when I first started hearing about Global South. And my founder, Bissy Silva, really felt it was important for us, even at the early stage of our careers, to travel. So anytime she had opportunities to travel, she would say to us, I already know all these people, I'm not going, you go, And so for me and my peers who are working in the center, that was our opportunity to learn. And I have to say, like now looking back, there were 4 of us at the time that she really took under her wing, and 3 of us, 2 from the UK, 1 from America, 1 from Nigeria. And I think I took it for granted, the power of my passport, because I have a British passport. And so I get a lot of opportunities to travel, and I can respond very quickly to that travel because I don't have to deal with visas. I think the most, difficult thing I had to do was like maybe the day before I was traveling, realizing I needed an ESTA to go to America, But 2 years ago, I was traveling through West Africa to lead an arts school, and I thought, I'm only going to West Africa. I have a West African passport. Let me just be Nigerian on this trip. And until I got to the airport, my cousin said, you should have taken your British passport with you, because even though you're West African, you're still going to face this challenge, this mobility challenge. And so, it's something I think it's important in recognizing timelines, especially for people coming from places where the passport isn't as powerful. What does that mean in terms of open calls? I've led on open calls, and when it's quite tight, what does that mean? People are accessing visas to attend these international opportunities for them to build their careers. And so I recognize the hierarchy, and I recognize the privilege that I even have. And so I think it's very important also I always say that I bring in people to Nigeria as well, because I want them to experience a little bit of challenge in getting visas. Nigeria, you have to get a visa. I don't know if there's, apart from West Africa, you have to get a visa. And I think that's important for people who have wonderful passports to recognize, especially because Nigerian visa office is a challenge. It is an obstacle course. And I think it's very good for people to recognize that coming, at least just once, so that there's like empathy in developing these calls for professional development outside of the continent. And then another thing I want to say is that traditional colonial connections, so it makes sense for someone from Nigeria or Ghana to connect with the UK, or for Francophone Africa to connect with with France. But it's important when we're doing professional development to also encourage for these opportunities outside of our traditional roots, so outside of our traditional connections, because that is where the magic happens. I've spoken to someone this morning from Slovenia, and I just happened to have been to Slovenia. That had nothing to do with my day-to-day practice, and a place I never thought I would go, but I learned so much from. And also CEC took me to Kazakhstan. And everyone's like, what are you doing in Kazakhstan? But I was learning about Central Asia, because although we don't traditionally have a connection, I think there's an inroad, there's an opportunity for West Africa to connect with Central Asia, to connect with Asia, to connect with Western Europe. And I think when we're building training opportunities, either as organizations that do that or as leaders, I think we need to think outside of the box as well, so that our teams are gaining experiences that we could never have thought of, or could give them through these traditional colonial connections. And also they can bring experiences back to us, and we can learn from them, and our whole teams can learn from them, and our ecosystems can learn from them.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more, and would have a lot of to say about that, but I'm being pushed from my right-hand side to close, but I'm just going to abuse a little bit and then give you the chance. One more comment, if anybody feels strongly about it, or if you don't feel strongly about it, but if you want to contribute. And if not, then I'll give you the floor to give last comments if you have them.
Your turn.
Okay. My comment would be that mobility is a wonderful thing, and without mobility, I think my life would have been absolutely different, because it has contributed to a lot in my professional life, of course, my personal life. I don't know, so many different contacts, so many different perspectives, and I think it is very important to give the underprivileged people and the representatives of underprivileged countries, be it like, because they have a lot of challenges, also the simplest one, the visa, but also economic opportunities to go somewhere so easily. And I think it is really very important to work with these kind of communities and to give them a chance to expand their horizons, because there is an amazing potential in all these countries which is undiscovered, and the mobilities and the professional development schemes where you can meet new people gives you really a lot of chance to exchange and to learn a little bit more about even about yourself, and not only about the cultures of these people, but primarily about yourself as well.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. Someone who's been over the last 20 years unable to live in the same country more than 2 years. So I can tell you, j'ai la bougeotte, like we say in French. And yeah, I think beyond the fact, I think this is why we are all in this sector. I think we share something in common, that visceral need to connect with the others, to know something different, to learn something completely that will push you to question who you are and how you live, and open your perspective. I mean, it takes you out from your center thing, you know, it humbles you and open your mind to, there are so different ways to feel, live, understand, and experience things, and you start accepting that there are different ways to live this world, and you have to accept it. And I think moving and living that, it's part of the process. You cannot, it's not something you could read, you know. You need to move and live in the context, and then you learn. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks to both of you. It feels like the conversation is actually
you.
just starting, so it's somehow, oh, are we finishing yet? And actually, I'm not going to wrap it up. I'm going to give I don't know, a few ideas to work on this afternoon and also tomorrow, because it feels like some of the topics that you put on the table and some of the people in the audience put on the table actually deserve to be, you know, dug through a bit better. And I'm thinking here of the question of self-exotization, that exoticizing that you mentioned, which is something that it feels like we would really need to unpack. Or also the issue that a few of you raised about who gets to travel, and the question of privilege, and the question of social privilege, not just to shame those of us that are privileged enough to come to Wales, but also to see to what extent we can use that privilege in order to include others. And then obviously the question of responsibility, and including the responsibility that we all carry for the colonial heritage, and what we can do about it today, to actually finally kind of stand up to that responsibility. So those of you that will be moderating this afternoon and tomorrow, maybe some of these can be also mentioned, and the discussion can continue.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for taking part in this. And thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milica, for moderating and throwing these ideas, and I'm pretty sure we will pick up on these ideas and words. Thank you very much, Tamara. Thank you very much, Ouafa, for kindly accepting to exchange and share your lived experience and your beliefs. We will have now a small break, and we will convene again in this space and online at 4:45. So enjoy some catering outside the theatre. At home you can grab some tea, and we will go back in this room at 4:45 for a new panel discussion. Thank you very much.